Welcome back everyone as we continue our Justice for Aaron Brady campaign. In this video, which will be the second video where we're scrutinising episode 12 of the podcast series Making of a Detective. This podcast, obviously, as you all know, was created by Ian Doyle in association with Stephen Breen, editor of the Irish Sun and the Irish Sun newspaper. In this video, we're going to have a brief look at some of the sketchy details that's given during the course of the podcast, and then we're going to look at the star witness, who Daniel Cahill was described as by a number of media outlets, how his story is portrayed. And as we have said, that the authorities, Mr. Pat Marry and these people creating this podcast here are actually telling lies about the lies that was told in court. And the reason for that is they hadn't the courage or the guts to continue to perpetrate the lies because they were so outlandish, and they've tried to reduce the lies down if that is possible. But we'll highlight that as we move along in the video. First little clip we're going to listen to is just a little bit of information about the time Aaron was arrested in New York. So we'll just have a quick listen to that now.
It may happen, but he was so brandished that he didn't care. Did he look leery? Did he look around? Yes. But again, I think he's just going to be that way until he got caught.
An operational plan was put in place. Homeland Security officers would perform the sting early in the morning as Brady travelled to work. It was May 18th, 2017, and the sun was just rising across the city landscape.
The morning that he was going to be taken down, I requested to be in one of the cars that was there. He left his house early in the morning, got into a nice Audi A4, and started driving.
The officers knew his route to work. They'd been trailing him for a period of months, and it was daily routine inside out by this stage.
We have covered this point before about Aaron's arrest in May 2017, but we just want to ask the question again and highlight the situation is why Aaron was not arrested and deported in 2013. Inspector Brian Mohan from the Dundalk Garda Station, the incident room, went out in late 2013 to New York. And by the time Brian Mohan, Inspector Mohan, went to New York, Aaron Brady was illegal and he should have been deported at that time. So all we're saying is very simply, there was, I suppose the best way to describe it, a sting operation set up to find criminals, people who had serious issues with immigration, serious issues with serious crimes here in Ireland, and people who are willing to tell lies to save themselves in New York and keep themselves there and not be deported, and were willing to tell lies. And we have shown these people have told lies, and we just wanted to highlight that again. Those 4 years, Aaron Brady should not have been allowed to stay in the United States of America, to all intents and purposes. And in the next little clip, we're just going to hear a little bit more from the man himself, Mr. Pat Marry, Senior Investigating Officer Mr. Pat Marry, and to talk about buying time. So we'll just go and have a listen to this clip.
Brady was flown back to Ireland by Garda escort and was seen in Dundalk Circuit Court for the driving charges that he faced.
He was initially convicted of the domestic charges and he got a 6-month sentence. I believed, and the prosecuting guard believed, that it was very lenient. It went back to the DPP and they agreed with the Gardaí that the sentence was lenient and it should be reviewed again. The case was reviewed again and he got an extra 6 months on top of the 6 months that he had got initially.
Aaron Brady was to spend the next 12 months behind bars in Wheatfield Prison in Dublin. This bought the Gardaí more time as they continued their search for sufficient evidence to deliver Ireland's first capital murder charge in nearly 40 years.
So that short clip details how Aaron was flown back to Ireland, was sentenced to 6 months in prison, which was appealed by the authorities and extended to 12 months. for the purpose of buying time. And we're told quite clearly there that this bought more time. And during the time that was bought, we know that the posters were put up in America, and Pat Murray, along with Senior Investigating Officer Mark Phillips, proceeded to put people under duress and coerce them into making false statements, because the people they were dealing with predominantly were criminals who had, as people say, skin in the game and did not, under no circumstance, want to come back to Ireland for a variety of different reasons that we've gone through previously. So it's just to highlight that this story is being carried through by journalists who are not given the whole story. And they do know the whole story if they wish to do so. But obviously, as we can see, they fail miserably at any attempt at serious investigative journalism. We're just going to have another listen to a very brief clip before we move on to Daniel Cahill. And there's a couple of little telling points in it. Once again, we see Mr. Murray's ego and his ability to build up his persona and how he handles things, and just something Aaron said. So we'll have a quick listen to this short clip.
Brady was back in custody, but the honour of delivering the bad news was left to Pat Murray. His career had many standout moments, but few as important as this.
I went down to the cell. He knew he was at the end of his detention. He was expecting to get out and walk away. The door of the cell was opened. He was standing there. He walked out with a bit of a brazen head on him. And as he walked out, I just put my hand on his shoulder and I said, "No, you're free now. You're not detained under the provisions of Section 50 anymore, and you're free."
Brady's stride continued as he moved towards the exit door of the corridor. In typical Pat Murray fashion, he was pleased to have the last laugh.
And then I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, "Look, I'm now arresting you for the murder of Adrian Donohoe for the purpose of charge." And he just looked at me and he says, "I had nothing to do with the murder of Adrian Donohoe."
Pat Murray tells us there Aaron's response after he was, Pat Murray arrested Aaron for the murder of Detective Adrian Donohoe. And obviously Aaron has told him, "I had nothing to do with the murder of Detective Garda Adrian Donohoe." And this is on the back of 7 days intensive interviews in Dundalk Garda Station. And if we were to believe the stories that have been peddled by these episodes of Making the Detective, that Aaron was some sort of a snivelling wreck, he was an idiot, he was leery, he was looking behind him, he was wary of all sorts of things. And yet, Aaron was able to stand and face Pat Murray and tell him quite clearly what he has said all along. Right from that moment, from the moment of charge, all through the trial, and to this day, to this very second, Aaron Brady had nothing to do with the murder of Detective Adrian Donohoe. And that has to be made very clear. And when you see the story that has been created by these people who call themselves journalists, you can see quite clearly what they're trying to do is perpetuate a story that simply does not exist. And none more so than what we're going to listen to now of how to create something that is a total tissue of lies. So we're going to move on now to a little bit about Daniel Cahill.
Evidence as possible. What was gathered in the years since the shooting was all circumstantial, but would it be enough? While Brady was awaiting his day in court, the Gardaí and US intelligence agencies were still working hard to gather the final witness statements of anyone he may have spoken to in connection with the murder. A further break came after another man, familiar to Brady, got speaking with Homeland Security detectives. On the 25th of July, 2019, Daniel Cahill was asleep at home. Cahill, a former bartender in the Coachman's Inn, had moved on to a new cocktail bar in White Plains, New York. He didn't miss the Coachman's Inn one bit. His work nights no longer involved breaking up fights with dodgy characters high on an ego trip. As he was dozing off, he heard a large knock at the door. Outside of his building, 2 detectives were waiting, wanting to speak to him. They believed Brady confessed to him about the shooting. Not once, but multiple times. They waited, and waited some more. 2 hours went by, but they had a strong suspicion that Cahill was inside. Eventually, his wife answered the door and let the officers in. After a few minutes of searching the property, Cahill was found in his attic. He'd been there for close to 2 hours. The detectives were confused, as was Cahill. There was a small quantity of steroids and a suspected cannabis plant concealed in a closet. But the detectives weren't interested in them. They only wanted information on Aaron Brady.
How's it going? It's Jake Humphrey here from The High Performance, and we can all go forward together.
Forward.
Mile in cinemas now. Book tickets, certificate 18.
Over 2 years went by before Aaron...
We have called out journalists on numerous occasions and called it sloppy journalism over the course of Aaron's campaign. And this little clip here is probably where the likes of Ian Doyle, Stephen Breen, and in association with Pat Marry, go lower than the gutter to produce a tissue of lies. They're actually telling lies about the lies that was told, because none of the 3 of them had the balls to put out the story that Daniel Cahill was allowed to peddle during the course of his testimony. So, to break it down, initially in his best dramatic accent or voice, Mr. Doyle tells there was 2 detectives stood outside Daniel Cahill's apartment for 2 hours. They knew he was inside, so they just stood outside for 2 hours. Now, they knew he knew something, and they knew Aaron Brady had confessed to him numerous times. This is even before they got to speak to him. That's what they're telling us here. So, this is what we have to believe. But in Daniel Cahill's own testimony, and through some cross-examination of Agent Wade during the course of Aaron's trial, we know that there may very well have been over 10 to 12 agents there. Daniel Cahill tells us 5 men dressed in black took him down out of the attic, and there were other officers there. We know there was an immigration removal officer on scene when Daniel Cahill was arrested on 25th of July 2017. And we know from the expert who gave testimony during the course of the trial that because of Daniel Cahill's immigration status, the cannabis, the steroids, the machete attack, his allegiance or some form of connection to a terrorist organisation in Dublin, he should have been immediately taken to a detention centre and deported from America on the next available flight. That's what should have happened. And then we have this nonsense that they stood outside for 2 hours. Now we know for a fact that Daniel Cahill told us in court, and we are told by the authorities, that Daniel Cahill was in an attic, naked, for 6 hours. And Cahill even said himself, although if it's ever seen his testimony, he says he was wrapped in insulation. And even when he said it himself, you could see he knew, oh, I shouldn't have said that. But we have a man, and this is the temperatures in New York on the 25th of July, 2017. And obviously it's warm summers, and this man wants us to believe he could stay in the attic naked for 6 hours, wrapped in insulation. Physically impossible. Now, obviously you, the public, are wondering why is this 2 hours and 6 hours so vital? And it is vital because at some time, again, because of the behaviour of the prosecution and the American agents, we're not sure, and surely it's information Aaron Brady's defence team should have been given. We're not sure whether the team to arrest Cahill arrived at 5 a.m, 6 a.m, 7 a.m. We know it was early in the morning. But Daniel Cahill is not signed in to NYPD 13th precinct until after 1 o'clock. So there's a 6-hour gap. And to fill that 6-hour gap in the paperwork, obviously they didn't get a chance to alter that paperwork, and it's just something that Aaron's defence team found. So they had to make up a story, and they said that Cahill was hiding in an attic for 6 hours. But, which is physically impossible, it makes no sense that anyone's going to stand around the property for 6 hours. And I'm sure the American agents aren't that stupid that they didn't see the attic door. All that aside, we are seeing very clearly what happened during the course of that 6 hours was 2 members of Garda Síochána in particular sat with Cahill and told him his options. Either you make up stories and tell lies about Aaron Brady, or you're being deported back to Dublin, where you have serious issues waiting for you there. You have a situation here in America where you now have cannabis and steroids, which we found in your flat, and we also have a machete attack. And Cahill may have had other issues, but to all intents and purposes, his rap sheet in America has been wiped clean. So this is why those 6 hours are so vital. Because that is when the deed was done. The collusion, the coercion and the corruption took place in those 6 hours by the man described as the star witness in Aaron Brady's case. And that is what we are dealing with. That is the calibre of people. And I will say once again, if Ian Doyle and Stephen Breen don't know the difference between 2 hours and 6 hours and the vital importance of that time, did they know anything about the case? And if you don't know the details of the case, you shouldn't be producing bullshit like this. Because it's disgusting, and I say again, Ian Doyle, Stephen Breen, this is gutter journalism at its worst. And once again, if we send out the invitation, if you want to discuss it, if you want to go through the details of those, I think it's 48 seconds, I was down 54 seconds. If you want to go through the details of that 54 seconds alone, we're more than welcome to more than happy to speak to you at any time, and you're more than welcome to reach out to us. Because at some stage this is going to have to be rerun again, because it can't be allowed to continue. So finally, just to finish off this evening's video, we have to a very large extent stayed away from the emotional aspect of this case, and but again, we see how it's used in this podcast and how Mary uses it in his drama and building himself up as some sort of hero in it. So I'm just going to play one more little clip, and then I'll just make one or two just brief comments on it.
For Pat and his colleagues, the feelings were mixed. It was a milestone moment in all of their careers, but only a minor constellation, having lost a man they all cared so much about.
It was emotional, yeah, because this was the next step of getting there, like, you know. And I remember when I was on the phone and there was 1 or 2 female detectives there, and they were in the office, and they started crying, like, you know. Like they could see all the hard work to put in, and they, you know, so they were emotional. The green light had been given to have this man charged with capital murder, and that was it.
We obviously have no reason to doubt that this was a very emotional time as Pat Murray made that phone call in the incident room. But with the same token, we can say that we believe that there was a number of people in that incident room knew that Aaron Brady could not have been the man who shot and murdered Garda Adrian Donohoe. For the simple reason is they knew the man was over 6'1" tall. And indeed, in some of Detective Raisin's debriefings, he actually mentioned the gunman being over 6'2". And they would also have been fully aware in the incident room, and a number of the Gardaí would have been aware that it was criminals they were dealing with in America that had given statements against Aaron Brady, that extradition warrants had been made disappear, criminal records have been made disappear. They were dealing with people who had ammunition and cocaine and large amounts of cash here in Ireland. And also were fully aware of Daniel Cahill's history and Daniel Cahill's criminal activities in New York. So obviously not all the members of the Garda Síochána in that incident room were privy to all the details, much the same as Aaron Brady's defence. But I am sure there are good, decent Gardaí who was in that incident room and who were upset and was emotional following what had happened. And there is a possibility here to do the right thing. There are a number of families involved here, and all the families deserve justice. There is no doubt about that. And we can say without any fear of contradiction, Aaron Brady cannot be the man who shot and murdered Detective Garda Adrian Donohoe. And at some stage, someone will have to come forward and do what is right. We can't put it any simpler than that. And we hopefully that day is sooner rather than later. So thank you again for watching. We will continue to scrutinise this podcast by these people, and we'll be back again with another video very shortly. Thank you for watching, and please, please, please continue to like, comment and share. Thank you.